Hello everyone, it's Matt, Comic Quarter 410, here to do a contest entry video for 3 different contests that 3 great YouTubers are currently nice enough to be putting on. And I'm talking about Manuel Melendez, Hurc Collects Comics, and AG Surfer. There's obviously going to be links below to all 3 channels, so please go give them a sub if you already haven't, because these guys are cool enough and nice enough to be giving away stuff out of their personal collections for free to their subscribers, and that's just awesome. So go show them some support, please, if you haven't already. First up is Manuel Melendez. I was fortunate enough to meet Manny NYC and his missus at Baltimore Comic Con this past year. The pair of them are very nice people. Sat down and talked to Manny for probably 30 minutes. Hell of a nice guy. And the whole gist of Manny's contest, he just wanted us to link his channel and tell people to go give him a sub and check out his videos if they haven't already. So please do that if you haven't. And if you do go check his channel out, you'll be doing yourself a favor. He has some great stuff. He has an awesome sketch cover collection. He just picked up a beautiful, timely Captain America. He's got a Jack Kirby signed Forever People #1 and tons of other great stuff. So go check out Manny's channel. Next up is Hurc Collects Comics. He's doing a 50 subscriber giveaway, so please go give him a sub as well if you haven't. He collects a lot of stuff from my childhood era, which I think is cool. And he mentioned in his contest he wanted us to focus on hero rivalries, our favorite ones. And he had mentioned Hulk versus Thing, which is great. One thing I've always liked about the Hulk since I was a kid is the type of character he is based on rage. He fights a lot of villains, obviously, but he doesn't care. He'll fight heroes, too. And he's had some great fights and great rivalries, whether he's fighting Thing, Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Thor, the Avengers, or one of his many villains. Most of his fights are pretty cool, usually. And my favorite rivalry is Hulk and Wolverine. If you haven't seen it, there's also, I believe it was direct to DVD, but an animated Hulk versus Wolverine, and it was really well done. And the second part of it was Hulk versus Thor, which was also well done. So if you haven't checked that out, go watch it. It's cool. But this is my copy of Incredible Hulk 181. I bought this many years ago, and it wasn't cheap then, but it's certainly worth a lot more now than it was then. I bought this raw and submitted it. Came back at a 9.2 with off-white to white pages. Very happy to have this. And this is Wolverine's, first full appearance versus his cameos 180. But this is his first cover. And this is one of the most legendary comics, not only in the Bronze Age, comics covers rather, not only in the Bronze Age, but in the history of comics. Just a beautiful, eye-catching cover by the late, great Herb Trimpe, and it is iconic now. Very happy to have this book. But honestly, story-wise, that fight's decent. But for my money, I enjoyed this story better. And this is Hulk 340. This is one of my favorite Todd McFarlane covers. Again, just an iconic cover. And this is a must-have for any Wolverine or Hulk fan, in my opinion. Great book. Also really enjoyed this. What If was one of my favorite series because they could do whatever they wanted. They could kill heroes, they could blow up the whole planet and didn't affect continuity. So they'd really go all out on a lot of these stories. And this is What If 31, What If Wolverine Killed the Hulk. Cool story, different take on Hulk 180 and 181. And got this great Bob Budiansky cover on it. Another great read. And Wolverine even fought Hulk's son, Scar. And that was awesome too, of course. And I just love this cover to Wolverine Origins 41, this Painted Beauty by Doug Brathwaite. Did a great job on that series. The other rivalry, I almost picked Conan and Red Sonja because I love their partnership and rivalry at the same time because it has that weird dichotomy because Conan's used to pulling any woman he wants. He's the man. But Red Sonja won't hear any of it. She won't have any man that couldn't defeat her in combat. So their relationship is very tense, and I always enjoyed both of those characters and their team-ups. But I decided to focus on the world's finest. DC's 2 biggest heroes often team up, but they have this tense rivalry as well. They're the world's finest, but You have Batman, who's a vigilante and has methods and techniques that Superman doesn't agree with because he's the moralistic Boy Scout. And, you know, if you want to see more about how Batman acts, I highly recommend picking up the Justice League Tower of Babel trade. Great stuff, and it'll show you how Batman does business. But this is a great, great cover here to Batman 612 by Jim Lee, and they fought in this issue, and I liked how Batman was prepared for him. And this was a great series. I really liked the first run by Jeff Lubb and Ed McGuinness. This is actually the second or third printing of Superman Batman #1, but I always loved this Ed McGuinness cover. Got him to sign it a couple years ago, as well as my 2 first printings of #1. But this was a great series, I thought. Had its ups and downs, but you know, the Michael Turner run was awesome too. And always liked this cover here of Batman and Bloodied Superman to issue 2, so I got Ed McGuinness to sign that as well. And I wanted to do kind of like an honorable mention thing, because I wouldn't say this was a rivalry, but one of the best hero fights I always enjoyed that doesn't get mentioned much was in this series. This is DC versus Marvel, and when I was a youngster, I thought they executed this pretty well. They let people, this was in the days before email, you had to call in to vote, but they would let the readers call in or mail in, snail mail a ballot, and you got to vote on who would win each fight, and they wrote the fights based on our votes. But one fight, I'm not sure if they went for the votes or if they just did what they wanted to do, was Batman versus Captain America. And I thought it was really cool the way they handled it. They just kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and they were so skilled, and they kept countering each other. They just fought on and fought on and fought on, and they were exhausted, and they finally just called it a draw. Neither one of them could gain any ground. And some people would say it was kind of a cop-out, but I thought it was kind of cool the way they respected both of their abilities so much. So that's issue 1. I believe these are still relatively cheap, and it's a cool read. Issue 2. Issue 3. Love that cover. I think it's Claudio Castellini. Could be wrong. And issue 4. And as you can see by some of these characters up top, this led to the Amalgam comics, which I thought were great, and I wish they'd do another batch of, where they mashed up a Marvel and DC character like there's Spider-Boy and, Angel Hawk. I can't remember what it was Night Creeper, I think. It was Creeper and Nightcrawler, but you get the gist of it. Doctor Strange Fate. They did some cool stuff, in my opinion, with those Amalgam books. So that's it for Hurc Collects Comics contest. Again, please go give him a sub. Last up is my buddy AG Surfer. Sorry it took me so long to get to this contest entry, but I had a lot of stuff going on. But he wanted us to pick 7 heroes, and I didn't necessarily pick my favorite because Spider-Man and Batman are probably my favorites, but I figured not only would a lot of people pick them, but a lot of people have better books than me to show. But one of my favorites is Jonah Hex. Still need to get an All-Star Western 10, but I'm getting close to finishing my All-Star Western run / Weird Western Tales and my Jonah Hex Volume 1. I have all of the later Jonah Hex and All-Star series complete. But this is All-Star Western number 11 with Jonah Hex on the cover here. This is his second appearance. And it's my copy of Jonah Hex number 1. And I was fortunate enough to get these signed by the great Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. He signed my number 2. It's a beautiful copy of issue 2. Signed my issue number 3. And this is Jonah Hex number 1 from 2006, I believe it is. Yeah. And it's by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti. And they had the reins of this character for nearly 10 years, and they did a great job on it. And I really, really enjoyed this series and the All-Star Western relaunch. So, big fan of him. Hope to get those runs completed someday soon. Oh, also wanted to show this again. My Death of Jonah Hex Spectacular that My buddy Ira got this signature series for me recently, and came back at a 9.2 signed by Garcia Lopez. So very happy to have that. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous cover. Next up is Matt Wagner's Grendel. Big fan of Grendel. Always liked Grendel as a kid, but a lot of the earlier books were pretty much as expensive then as they are now. This was easily a $100 book in the 80s. And good luck finding it before the days of eBay and the internet. It was hard to track down. But this is Comico Primer number 2 from 1982. First appearance of Grendel. You can see how kind of rough the design of the character is there. Definitely evolved, and Matt Wagner was nice enough to sign this for me. Came back in 9.2 with white pages, and he is a hell of a nice guy, and it's really a thrill to me when I meet somebody whose work I like a lot and they're really a great person. This is my Comico Grendel Volume 1, Number 1, and I prefer the Hunter Rose Grendel personally to Christine Spar, but I did also like this volume of Grendel as well with the Pander brothers and Matt Wagner. Great cover there. Very cool, underrated character. Another one of my favorite characters is Ito Egami, both from the movies and the Lone Wolf and Cub comics. This is such a great series, so well crafted. It is the samurai tale of all samurai tales. So worth checking out. And the American First Comics releases, when they were translated, Frank Miller did a lot of the earlier covers. And this is Lone Wolf and Cub number 1. Excuse me. Ito Egami was basically the Shogun's greatest samurai. And the Shogun got paranoid. He started, I don't know, I believe he was getting like dementia and going a little crazy. But he thought Ogami was plotting against him, so he sent assassins to kill his family, and they killed his wife, but they didn't get him or his baby. So he just basically went on the run as a Ronin with his baby, and went on all these adventures trying to get back to his daimyo to kill him for ordering the death of his family. Just a great, great series. Can't recommend it enough. Here's another Frank Miller cover to number 3. And another Frank Miller, Lynn Varley beauty. He really used some great color patterns and stuff on these covers. So, great stuff. Next up is Rorschach. My Watchmen number 1 is rough. You can see there's a water stain here at the bottom. My friend messed it up when we were young, but I've had this copy since it came out. Really need to upgrade because I have the whole series, and other than that, they're all pretty high grade. But just always loved Rorschach the most out of the Watchmen. The way his character was written by Alan Moore. I know he's inspired by The Question, who I also really dig, especially Steve Ditko's stuff, Charlton's stuff on The Question. But always liked Rorschach, and a lot of people didn't like the Watchmen movie, and I liked it a lot more once I saw the director's cut. Didn't like the ending so much, but I understood kind of why they had to change it for the movie. But nevertheless, I thought Jackie Earle Haley was great as Rorschach, and really dug it. Watchmen number 2. And this is beautiful Rorschach cover to Watchmen 6. And then I was fortunate enough to meet Dave Gibbons at Baltimore Comic-Con and got him to sign my Watchmen number 12, the final issue. Came back in 9.4 with white pages. Very, very happy to have that. In addition, they did the Before Watchmen that, of course, Alan Moore refused to be involved with, but Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo, I loved it, especially Bermejo's covers. Beautiful Bermejo cover to Rorschach number 1. And I also had to buy this beautiful Jim Steranko cover. This is, I believe, a 1 in 25 variant to Rorschach number 1. Hope to see Jim Steranko again and get that signed someday. Great, great stuff. Next up, one of my favorites, Swamp Thing. Again, I've enjoyed pretty much every volume of Swamp Thing that they've put out. Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson started it off, and Bernie's the master of horror. I can't say enough about how much I love the artwork on this series. Was fortunate enough, actually, my buddy Fool Killer 5150 got my #1 signed by Bernie at one of his conventions, and I thank you for that, Steve. But I was fortunate enough this past year, Bernie finally came back to Baltimore, and I got to meet him, and just hell of a nice guy. And I hold him in the highest esteem as an artist, and seeing him sick in a wheelchair and still taking the time to smile and meet fans and didn't want a nickel to sign your book, I just think the world of the guy and the world of his work. So I didn't think I could be a bigger fan of him until I met him. So I think that's just great. He signed my Swamp Thing #2. My #3, I think it looks beautiful there, signed in silver by Bernie. Love that cover. And got a couple others signed too, but didn't pull them all out. But had to get my Swamp Thing 7 signed where he drew Batman and Swamp Thing meeting up. And there's another rivalry, you know. They met up a couple times, Batman and Swamp Thing, going back to Hurc's contest. And to my knowledge, even when they met up in Batman's title, Batman always figures out a way to beat anyone, even Superman. He really didn't defeat Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing just kind of calmed down and left, is the way I remember it. But this storyline right here was good. Alan Moore, of course, on it. And I was lucky enough to get Swamp Thing 52, signed by Rick Veitch. And, you know, Swamp Thing, Arkham Asylum, Batman, what is not to like? And then I got issue 53, signed by John Toddleben. So you can see how Swamp Thing was wrecking shop. And, yeah, Batman just had to get him to stop. That's all he could do was try to reason with him. But also, in Saga of the Swamp Thing is one of my favorite creative runs in comics history, when Alan Moore took over the character and revamped it with issue 20 and got my copy, CGC. This is a raw copy I bought, God, more than 20 years ago. And this came back at a 9.8 with white pages. Very, very happy to have that. Another one of my favorite heroes, the great Bruce Lee. Always liked Bruce Lee since I was a kid. This is the Malibu Comics Bruce Lee #1 by Badger creator Mike Barron, and also Nexus creator. And Val Merrick did the art on this. Beautiful cover. And one of my other favorite series as a kid, also showcased Bruce, Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. This is my issue #1 with a fantastic Neil Adams cover. And I was fortunate enough to get a nice copy of Deadly Hands 14. This is my favorite Neil Adams Bruce Lee cover. Maybe my favorite Neil Adams cover. I've always loved this. This copy is really sharp, just two small dings in the spine there. But beautiful, beautiful stuff. And Neil signed it down there in the bottom in silver for me. Very happy to have that one in my collection. I mean, Bruce Lee continues to be relevant decade after decade after he's passed away. Another character I really like that you don't hear much about anymore is the Warlord. And I cannot stress how hot Warlord Volume 1 was when I was a kid in like the early 80s. Those books were not cheap, and they were red hot because Mike Grell's the man. But this is my DC First Issue Special #8, first appearance of the Warlord. Got it signed by Mike Grell. He is such a nice guy, and what a talented artist. It's always liked this story, you know, kind of like a sword and sorcery thing, but it's a modern day guy. Travis Morgan gets trapped in Scartaris, and he has a gun and stuff, but it's still like a sword and sorcery age. It's good. What's the word I'm looking for? Good amalgamation. I'll steal from the DC Marvel, but a good amalgamation of you know, the sword and sorcery genre with being able to throw in some modern knowledge and weaponry. So very cool stuff. And this is my issue number 1 that Mike Grell signed in gold. Really like that. And Warlord number 2. Also got him to sign that. And one of my other favorite covers he did to Warlord number 11. Also got that signed. And later volumes of the Warlord, those of you who have read Mike Grell's Green Arrow Longbow Hunters know that his painted artwork is phenomenal. And he started doing some amazing painted covers like this one. Relaunch of number 1. And he really shined on this final volume of Warlord. And just a beautiful painted cover to number 1. Joe Prado did the art inside, which you don't see much of that anymore. He's normally just inking Ivan Reis. So did a great job on this book, though. There's number 1. And I haven't read this in a while, so I may be getting the issue number wrong. But, you know, this might be it. But in one of the issues leading up to the final issue, issue 16, Travis Morgan dies. He's killed. And what's cool is when I met Mike Grell this past year, he was signing my books, and he, you know, I had some of them, but I didn't have enough money to get them all signed. But he saw them. He's like, oh, you know, I had in mind how I was going to kill Travis Morgan back, and he showed me the panel in this issue here, his first appearance. He's like, I didn't know if he was going to be killed a year later or 30 years later, but, you know, decades later, he killed him, but he had it all mapped out already. But another beautiful, beautiful Mike Grell cover. And towards the end, that's why I guess they canceled it to lack of sales, but they never went anywhere with it. But Travis Morgan was killed, and his son, Tinder, was taking over as the Warlord, and he even did it for a couple issues, and it just ended. So never got to see where that would go, but very cool stuff, and Mike Grell is just awesome. And my final favorite hero is, most of you probably know and expect, Conan the Barbarian. Always liked Conan since I was a kid. Loved the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies when I was young. And just loved Barry Windsor Smith's art. So many great artists on Savage Sword, I won't even get into that. But that stuff, from getting Conan from the comics, the non-Comic Code Authority magazines, and the movies with Arnold, I was hooked. And this is my Conan number 1. Not a bad copy. It's nice and bright, but it has a crease. I'd like to upgrade that at some point. Barry Windsor Smith covers here. Got a nice copy of number 2 already. Nice bright copy. And a nice copy of number 3 as well, which is a little lower print run than 1 and 2. This is my Conan 33. Was lucky enough to get it signed by the late great Herb Trimpe. It's one of the, I think it might be the only Conan cover he did, but really dig that one. And then there is Conan 37, which is a Neil Adams cover. So last but not least, sorry this is running so long, but AG said he wanted us to maybe mention some movies if we felt like it. And that would take too long, so I probably have 300-400 DVDs, but I just thought I'd showcase my favorite director of all time, and that's Stanley Kubrick. I mean, to me, he's a perfectionist, and his movies are just beautifully shot, beautifully scored. Everything is meticulous, and a lot of his movies I'll watch multiple times and notice new stuff every time, and I just always loved his stuff. The Shining is probably my favorite horror movie. Love it, love it, love it. Seen it more times than I can count. 2001's amazing. I need to buy a Blu-ray upgrade of that. Barry Lyndon, another movie, beautifully shot. Full Metal Jacket is another one of my favorites he did. Captain Strangelove. Shout out to Captain Strangelife. Doctor Strangelove is another great movie he did. And also loved Clockwork Orange. I think this movie is still edgy today. Still seems ahead of its time. And I just think Kubrick is a genius. And I love his work. But again, just want to thank all 3 guys, Manny, NYC, Hurc, and AG Surfer, for putting on these contests. There's links below. Please go give them a sub. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to check out my video. Sorry it ran so long. Everyone, take care of yourselves and enjoy your comics.